What's happening, Expeditioners? It's Peter here. I want to talk to you today about something that I learned, and I thought it was relevant to share because it might change the way that you go ahead and pay for or pick up your prescription drugs. And a lot of us go to the retailers around us, the Walgreens, CVS's. You need a prescription for a cold or a sinus infection or an injury or whatever. We've all done it. And generally, I think, at least for me, I will go and I will have insurance on file, and that insurance plan will usually cover prescription drugs to some extent. And then I'll have to pay the portion that I owe, usually the copay or the deductible or whatever it might be. And so those are usually pretty affordable, but anywhere from $15, $20, $25, right? I mean, I think it's pretty common that when you go and you pick up a prescription drug, you're expecting to pay something, but it is probably something that you consider pretty affordable. Let's just call it $20. I think that's what a lot of people are generally used to. But one of the things that I have learned here from doing some reading, as well as talking to some of my friends who are pharmacists, is that the deals that pharmacists have had with pharmaceutical companies, and sometimes their employers, sometimes big pharmacies, has not necessarily led to the best outcomes for individual consumers. And there are a number of reasons for this. Now, let me go back in history here. There were actually some rules. They weren't laws, but they were rules. So a pharmaceutical company would go to a pharmacy and say, hey, we would love for you to obviously provide our drugs. Here are the drugs that we have. And the requirements for you to be able to resell them is such that if they are covered by insurance, your people, your pharmacists, your technicians cannot give them the cash price. Now, this might sound fairly reasonable. Let's say a drug is $1,000 and you need it, an antibiotic or something like that to go on. And so you go and it's going to be $1,000, but your insurance is going to pick up $980 of it and you're going to pay that $20. Well, the reason that they wouldn't allow that is because pharmaceutical companies actually have a cash price as well. So what they would allow you to do is just say, hey, I don't have insurance. How much would this be? And I think a lot of us would say, well, is this going to be $1,000, Pete? Well, the cash price might be a lot cheaper. In fact, the cash price might be less than your copay amount. Now, in one example, and I don't know which drug this was, but the drug price was a few $100s, and a person with insurance would have to pay $20. However, the cash price for this drug was $4. Now, you can understand why a pharmacist or a technician would not be allowed to share that cash price, because if you were the consumer, you'd say, hey, don't even put it on my insurance. I'll just give you the $4 because I don't want to pay the $20, and the insurance company is going to get money saved. But the pharmaceutical companies don't like that, because now instead of getting $300 for that pharmaceutical, they're only going to get $4, but that $4 is still profitable for them. So what ended up happening is that because of these gag clauses in contracts, that pharmacists and technicians and representatives were prohibited from sharing cash prices, in 2018, a law was passed, or a couple laws actually, Know the Lowest Price Act and the Patient Right to Know Drug Prices Act. So those were signed into laws. Now, I will say that there may still be contractual obligations. I would say that if there are, they might violate the law, but I'm not an attorney. Or state-specific regulations, which may either change the prices or change the rules around some of these, or modify what people can do or can share. But those gag clauses that were previously used to restrict pharmacists from sharing cash prices are no longer the problem that they used to be prior to 2018. And so one of the things that I would recommend is always asking what the cash price would be before they submit it to insurance, because you actually might save a lot of money. Now, this actually did happen to me. I actually had a drug for a cold sore that I needed to pick up, and I noticed what they were charging me was a little bit higher than what I would normally pay for prescription drugs. But I thought, well, why am I paying $100 for this? And I said, actually, is there any cheaper alternative? And I was thinking, is there a generic version or something like this? But this was the generic version. But at the time, the pharmacist told me, well, if you actually just want to pay cash, it's $10. So instead of paying $100 for the copay, and I'm not even sure what the retail or the street price or the price that they would charge the insurance companies was, but to me, the actual out-of-pocket cost was so much lower if I just paid for it and did it around insurance. So obviously pharmaceutical companies and pharmaceutical makers want to get paid as much as possible, and the insurance companies enable that. But you, as a person who is actually paying out of pocket as well, you might think, well, Pete, saving $20, I can afford that. I can afford that as a copay. It just saves me from having to ask. Well, your cost might be a fraction of that, and it doesn't hurt to ask. The cash price might be higher, right? It might not actually save you any money, but because of these acts here that allow pharmacists to generally share cash prices with you, I think it's a good practice now when you're picking up your prescriptions to just ask what the cash price would be or if there are alternatives. So you might be able to save some money there and get a little healthier. So I hope that helps. I'll see you later.